Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. Sri Lanka reposes faith in new faces. President Disanayake's NPP moves from 3 seats in the outgoing parliament to 159 in the new. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi marks the commencement of the 150th birth anniversary year celebration of Bagwan Birsa Munda on the occasion of Janjatiya Gaurav Diwas. A senior Hamas official says that the group is ready for a ceasefire in Gaza. US ambassador also presents a peace plan in Lebanon. And India celebrates Guru Nanak Jayanti or Guru Purab with religious fervor. President, Vice President and Prime Minister extend warm greetings. Sri Lanka's electorate gave a massive mandate to the National People's Power. That's the coalition of President Disanayake. The South Asian nation of 22 million people handed him legislative power to push through his plans to fight poverty and corruption in the country. They will now look to him to deliver them out of the country's worst financial crisis since independence from the British in 1948. Here's our report. Sri Lanka has voted for a fresh start. President Disanayake's Marxist-leaning National People's Power coalition won 159 seats in the 225-member parliament, a massive two-thirds majority. It is one of the biggest in the country's history, but also one with a majority of first-time lawmakers.
We have given this government a two-third majority. What we say is to give people concessions.
Despite Disanayake's victory in the September presidential polls, his NPP had just 3 seats in parliament. In November 2024, he dissolved parliament and sought a fresh mandate. The election results underline widening support for his leftist policies. Yet, the weight of the mandate is to steer the nation's economic recovery. That responsibility is now squarely on his shoulders.
Is over such an overwhelming mandate. It shows that there won't be any checks and balances on the executive arm. That is very worrying. Because a functioning democracy needs a strong government, but also strong opposition.
The Samagi Janna Balavegaya party of opposition leader Sajid Premadasa, the main challenger to Disanayake's coalition, won 40 seats. And the New Democratic Front, backed by previous President Ranil Wickramasinghe, won just 5 seats.
So it's a clear indication that they have given a powerful slap in the face of corrupted politicians. So they have refused all the politicians who has been living in the parliament and doing nothing for the betterment of the country.
Boosted by a $2.9 billion bailout program from the International Monetary Fund, the economy has begun a tentative recovery. But the high cost of living is still a critical issue for many, especially the poor. Bureau Report, DD India. And DD India correspondent Dr. Ahmed Muin Farooqi now joins us from Colombo with perspective on the story. Dr. Farooqi, good evening. How will President Disanayake's government leverage its two-third majority to implement promised reforms, particularly addressing corruption and reducing the cost of living?
A very good evening to you, Mark. Yes, you see President Disanayake's government with its decisive two-thirds majority that they have achieved today. With this, it is expected to move forward with constitutional and structural reforms aimed at tackling systemic corruption. The government is also likely to introduce policies that could help the economy grow, while at the same time also focus on cost of living for the common man. In fact, cost of fuel and electricity tariffs were promised to be relooked at during the election campaigns. In the long run, strengthening and supporting local industries as well as creation of job opportunities. These had been a part of the manifesto of NPP during the presidential elections, and they were also talked about during the election campaigns recently. The mandate will also allow the administration to enact reforms without any opposition roadblock. In fact, it will also allow the government to introduce other reforms and even go ahead with constitutional amendments if necessary. Mark.
What factors contributed, in fact, to the NPP's power, coalition's historic electoral performance? And what does this mean for Sri Lanka's political landscape?
Yes, Mark, it has been a historical performance for National People's Power. In fact, the coalition success can be attributed to widespread public dissatisfaction with previous successive regimes and their policies, which were blamed for the economic crisis, the peak of which we had seen in 2022, along with corruption scandals and lack of tangible reforms. The grassroots campaign of NPP had focused entirely on radical reform in the way the government would function, as well as promises of economic relief. These had resonated strongly with the voters across urban and rural areas in the entire island. Sweeping of 21 out of 22 electoral districts, it shows that the coalition has effectively sidelined traditional political powers like the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, New Democratic Front, United National Party and other parties also. This also marks a significant shift in Sri Lanka's political landscape, signaling public's desire for change and a break from entrenched political dynasties, voting out the old guard and bringing in a new party which has been free from any charges of corruption. Mark.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Farooqi, for being with us from Colombo. The 150th birth anniversary celebrations of the tribal icon Bagwan Birsa Munda began on Friday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid the foundation stone or inaugurated development projects worth around $800 million in Jamui district of Bihar. The Prime Minister also highlighted the great contribution of tribal society to the traditional medicine system of India. Here's the story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi marked the commencement of the 150th birth anniversary year celebration of Bagwan Birsa Munda on the occasion of Janjatiya Gaurav Diwas. He laid the foundation stone and inaugurated various development projects worth around 6,640 crore rupees in Jamui district of eastern state of Bihar. While addressing the gathering, the Prime Minister spoke about the Pakka houses being built for tribal communities and how these will aid in their empowerment.
मेरे आदिवासी भाई बहनों के लिए करीब 1.5 लाख पक्के घरों के स्वीकृति पत्र है। आदिवासी बच्चों का भविष्य संवारने वाले स्कूल है, हॉस्टल है, आदिवासी महिलाओं के लिए स्वास्थ्य सुविधाएं हैं, आदिवासी क्षेत्रों को जोड़ने वाली सैकड़ों किलोमीटर की सड़कें हैं, आदिवासी संस्कृति को समर्पित म्यूजियम है, रिसर्च सेंटर है। आज 11,000 से अधिक आदिवासी परिवारों का अपने नए घर में देव दीपावली के दिन गृह प्रवेश भी हो रहा है।
PM Modi released a commemorative coin and postage stamp in honor of Bagwan Birsa Munda on the occasion. Emphasizing the great contribution of tribal society in the ancient medicine system of India, PM said that this heritage was also being protected, along with adding new dimensions for the future generations. He added that the government has set up a National Institute of Sowa Rigpa in Leh, upgrading the Northeastern Institute of Ayurveda and Folk Medicine Research in Arunachal Pradesh. He also said the government was setting up the upcoming Global Center for Traditional Medicine under the auspices of the WHO, which will help further propagate the traditional medicine system of tribals across the world. India's PM Modi also inaugurated an exhibition based on the life of Bagwan Birsa Munda, showcasing the rich tribal heritage and culture. Additionally, he inaugurated 2 tribal freedom fighters museums and 2 tribal research institutes aimed at preserving the history and heritage of tribal communities. Syed Absarul Hassan's report, DD India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the first Bodoland Mahotsav, This is a festival at the Sai Indira Gandhi Sports Complex in New Delhi on Friday. Well, the two-day Bodo Land Festival is a mega event on language, literature and culture to sustain peace and to build a vibrant Bodo society. The festival, it aims to integrate the indigenous Bodo people residing in Bodo land and other parts of Assam, West Bengal, Nepal and the international border areas of the northeast. Now, with this theme, which is peace and harmony for a prosperous Bharat, the celebration is also a testament to the transformative impact of the 2020 Bodo Peace Accord, which was signed under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Prime Minister hailed the accord, calling it a new path of development in the entire Northeast.
आप पल भर सोचिए, कोई मां, उसका इकलौता बेटा और उस मां ने बहुत लालन पालन से बड़ा किया हो बेटे को, और बेटा अन्य साथियों से मिलकर के हाथ में हथियार लेकर के मां को छोड़ करके जंगलों में भटकता हो, उसने जो राह चुनी है उसको पाने के लिए किसी की भी हत्या करने पर तुला हुआ हो, मां बेबस होकर के निराशा में दिन काट रही हो और एक दिन पता चले कि मां, तेरा बेटा उन शस्त्रों को छोड़ करके अब तेरे पास वापिस आया है। आप कल्पना कीजिए उस दिन उस मां को कितना आनंद होगा। आज पिछले 4 साल से मैं वो ही आनंद की अनुभूति करता हूं।
What's still to come here on DD India News Hour? Prime Minister heads to Nigeria on the first leg of his 3-nation tour on Saturday. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has told Putin that the deployment of North Korean soldiers is a serious escalation. And the US President Joe Biden is to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the APEC Summit in Peru for a third in-person meeting.
Our habitats are turning into concrete jungles, and that is concerning, but there is hope even in this grim reality.
Our rivers are like lifelines. They are spaces for humans, for biodiversity, and yes, we have neglected them so far, but really that's an opportunity for us to restore them to their natural conditions.
We now have species that can adapt by conserving the water they have instead of letting it evaporate and being easy to care for.
We have always been farmers in my family. We used to do chemical farming with hybrid seed varieties, but now we have switched to organic farming with natural seeds.
This embankment will be removed and the river will be widened to cover the grassland up to the wider flood embankments on both the Swiss and Austrian side.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lin. News now from West Asia. And the West Asian tensions, they remain ensnared, in fact, in the crossfire between Israel and the Triple H, which is Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. Now, on Friday, rockets from Lebanon hit a construction site in northern Israel. However, the Israeli military intercepted the barrage of rockets. In another development, a senior Hamas official has said that the group is ready for a ceasefire in Gaza. And also, a top Iranian official has vowed support for Lebanon to secure a ceasefire with Israel. Here's the report.
The conflict between Israel and Hamas fails to end. These visuals are of construction site in northern Israel, which was hit during a rocket attack from Lebanon on Friday. The Israeli military said that 5 projectiles fired into Israel from Lebanon were partly intercepted. Meanwhile, Israeli strikes hit the Hezbollah-controlled southern suburbs of Beirut, known as Dahiyeh, for a third consecutive day. Israeli military said that they will attack any attempt to bring weapons to Hezbollah from Syria.
We are identifying rockets and other weapons that Hezbollah is launching at Israeli territory that were manufactured in Syria and were given to Hezbollah from Syria. We will attack every attempt to bring weapons from Syria to Hezbollah, and we will attack all infrastructure we identify in Syria whose purpose is to produce weapons for Hezbollah.
After much reluctance to ceasefire talks, Hamas Political Bureau member Bassem Naim has said that the group is ready for a ceasefire in Gaza and has urged US President-elect Donald Trump to pressure Israel to end the aggression. US Ambassador to Lebanon presented a draft proposal for a truce to the Speaker of Lebanon's parliament, Nabi Berri, marking Washington's first formal effort in weeks to negotiate peace between Israel and Hezbollah. The diplomacy marks a last-ditch attempt by the outgoing US administration to secure a Lebanon ceasefire as efforts to end the war in Gaza appear totally adrift. A delegation of families of Israeli hostages visited Italy's Rome and urged US President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump to work on a deal to free before the winter those still being held. Israel launched its offensive against Hezbollah after almost a year of cross-border hostilities ignited by Gaza war, declaring it wanted to secure the return home of tens of thousands of people forced to evacuate from northern Israel. Bureau Report, TD India.
Well, with US President Donald Trump poised to assume office in January, diplomatic overtures appear to be accelerating to address escalating Middle East or West Asian tensions. And this signals a do it now or face it later approach. This sentiment was echoed through significant back-channel meetings and also proposals aimed at easing the multifaceted Israel-Hamas-Hezbollah conflict and also broader regional instability. DD India's Akhilesh Suman examines the state of play.
US media is reporting that President-elect Donald Trump's team is engaging with key persons on the diplomatic front. According to the New York Times, on November 11th, tech billionaire Elon Musk, known for his close ties to President-elect Donald Trump, held a meeting with Iran's ambassador to the UN, Amir Saeed Iravani. The meeting, described by Iranian sources as positive, lasted over an hour. The New York Times reports the encounter as a critical first step in fostering US-Iran diplomacy under the incoming administration. The Musk-Iravani dialogue hints at a departure from the more aggressive policies of the Republican establishment. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has previously expressed openness to mending ties with the West, adding further weight to this engagement. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is pursuing last-ditch efforts to mediate between Lebanon and Israel. On Thursday, US Ambassador to Lebanon, Dorothy Shee, presented a draft truce proposal to Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri. Sources indicate this is Washington's first formal written attempt in weeks to halt fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. The US Embassy in Beirut confirmed ongoing diplomatic efforts, while Israel's energy minister highlighted an increasingly promising outlook for a ceasefire. In a parallel development, senior Lebanese officials signaled Hezbollah's willingness to withdraw forces from the Israeli border under specific conditions. This renewed diplomatic push comes amid relentless violence. Israel has intensified its military campaign in Lebanon alongside its operations in Gaza. Key to any ceasefire is adherence to UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which calls for Hezbollah to withdraw fighters and weapons from border areas. The US and other powers view this resolution as the foundation for peace, though its implementation remains fraught with challenges. Akhilesh Suman's report for DD India.
Well, the US President-elect Donald Trump has been selecting his top team since winning the election last week. With 4 names announced recently, Trump picked 3 members of his legal defense team, including the lead attorney Tom Blanche, to serve in senior roles in the Justice Department. Trump nominated Blanche, who defended him in the hush money trial this year, and he's going to serve as the Deputy Attorney General. That's the second highest position in the Justice Department. Earlier, Trump had announced the name of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the United States' top health agency. In a post on X, Kennedy vowed to work to end chronic disease, clean up corruption, and provide Americans with the data they need to make informed decisions. Kennedy ran, in fact, for president in this year's election as an independent before he dropped out in August and endorsed Trump. Trump also has nominated the former U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Jay Clayton to serve as Manhattan's top federal prosecutor. President-elect Donald Trump later announced that he plans to select the North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum as his nominee to be the Secretary of the Department of Interior. He has been North Dakota Governor for 2 terms since 2016. Peru is set to host the U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. Biden's meeting with Xi Jinping is the final major international summit of his presidency. Now, Biden's trip to South America, it comes a day after he had met the President-elect Donald Trump at the White House.
Joe Biden arrived on Thursday in Peru to start his 6-day visit for the final major international summits of his presidency. Joe Biden will meet this week with Chinese President Xi Jinping in what may be the last important bilateral of his tenure. This will be the third in-person meeting between the two leaders, who met earlier in Indonesia's Bali at the G20 summit in 2022 and again in California during the APEC Summit in 2023. Biden will also hold private meetings with the heads of Japan, South Korea and Brazil on the sidelines of APEC and G20 summits. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirmed the meeting, describing it as an effort to responsibly manage the US-China competition and avoid escalation.
With respect to his meeting with President Xi, I don't expect him to pass messages. Obviously, President Trump, when he comes into office, will have his opportunity to engage directly with President Xi. But I will observe that transitions are uniquely consequential moments in geopolitics. They're a time when competitors and adversaries can see possibly opportunity because you have this change in government here. And so part of what President Biden will communicate is that we need to maintain stability, clarity, predictability through this transition between the United States and China. And he will also really reinforce the point that in order for us to manage this competition responsibly going forward, we have to sustain over the long term the channels of communication at every level, particularly the military-to-military level.
Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Lima to participate in the APEC Summit. Jinping inaugurated a massive deep water port in Peru, a $1.3 billion investment by Beijing. From Lima, Xi is scheduled to travel to Brazil for an annual meeting of the G20 and attend a state visit with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on November 20th. Biden and Jinping's meeting, set for Saturday on the sidelines of the APEC Summit, serve as a bookend to the president's high-stakes attempts to position the United States against an increasingly assertive Beijing. Bureau Report, DD India.
A shocking video has emerged in which extremists in Canada have asked Canadians to leave their country. In the video, a group of people gathered on a street can be heard asking Canadians to go back to Europe. They also called Canadians invaders. The extremists call themselves the natives of Canada. This video was shared on X by the journalist Daniel Boardman. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine and to withdraw troops. He did so in a phone call on Friday. According to the German government spokesperson, Scholz also told Putin that Russia should prepare for negotiations with Ukraine with the aim of achieving a just and lasting peace. Scholz had spoken to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the phone beforehand and will also do so again after his phone call with Putin. Scholz and Putin last spoke in December 2022, 10 months after Russia had launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky cautioned the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz against speaking to Vladimir Putin on the phone on Friday, saying that it would reduce the Russian leader's isolation and keep the war going. This is what a source in Ukraine's presidential office has said. A German government spokesperson said Scholz had urged Putin to begin talks with Kiev that would open the way for a just and lasting peace, as the leaders held their first phone call since December 2022 as the war in Ukraine rages on. Now, the source in Kiev told Reuters that Scholz, who's a close ally of Ukraine during the war with Russia, informed Zelensky in advance of his plans to speak to the Russian leader. The United Nations issued a warning on Friday regarding the potential impact of renewed Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure this winter. According to the United Nations, such attacks could lead to additional displacements of civilians. At the same time, Ukraine rejected claims that the country is shifting its focus in the conflict to prioritize security over land. It added that it remained committed to territorial integrity.
This is wrong. I think Russian propaganda is super active, and it's worrisome that our European partners are spreading it. So, first of all, we're fighting for the values, freedom, national interests, and territorial integrity is a part of our values. It's our country. Our priority is still to protect people, protect the nation, to liberate people from the temporary occupation.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Nigeria from November 16 to 17, marking the first visit in 17 years. The visit is expected to strengthen bilateral ties between the two great democracies. Prime Minister Modi is visiting the West African country on the invitation of the Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. DD India correspondent Vishal Barrister reports from Abuja.
The billboards and the LEDs on the roads of Abuja glitter with a welcome message for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The two countries have a long-standing relationship that spans over 6 decades. But this visit is quite significant, as it would be followed by the G20 summit in Brazil later this month. On the initiative of India, Nigeria was invited as a guest country for the first time on the G20 platform in Delhi.
When we had taken over the presidency of G20, our Prime Minister had invited Nigeria as a guest country. Given the very strong relationship that we have with them since 1958, we actually started our relationship with Nigeria 2 years before their independence. So that is the importance that we have been giving them, which has been, and the relationship has been nurtured very well. When we had invited them for G20, it was the first time that Nigeria came onto that platform, and they are very happy and they are very thankful to India for giving them this platform.
During the 2-day visit, Prime Minister will have a one-on-one meeting with the Nigerian President at the President Villa. MOUs in the field of culture, digital economy and survey are expected to be inked during this visit. A community reception is also planned at Abuja with the Indian diaspora.
Nigeria has a very strong Indian community presence, and people from every state will be joining the community reception. There is jubilation among Indian community, and they are coming from Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, everywhere, every part of Nigeria. They will be coming on 17th to listen to the Indian Prime Minister.
Abuja is all decked up for the welcome of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as you can see on this road that connects Hotel Hilton to the President Villa. With $27 billion investment, 200 Indian companies are the second biggest employer in Nigeria after the federal government. Indian companies dominate the economy of Nigeria. From pharma to two-wheelers, they are a big source of employment for the Nigerians.
We are an Indian group which is employing more than 1,500 Nigerians. And as you might know, the Indian companies in Nigeria are the second largest employer of labor.
Working with Simba Group and Mr. Grover has been excellent. My working with Simba Group for over 5 years, I've gained experience not only in renewable energy, also bicycles. It has helped me, it has impacted me in my career.
With this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, both nations expect to strengthen bilateral trade and work closely on people-to-people contact. India established its diplomatic mission in Lagos in 1958, 2 years before Nigeria's independence. Vishal Barristo's report for DD India.
What's still to come here on DD India News Hour? We'll be discussing what the landslide win for the NPP means for the people of Sri Lanka. At the climate talks in Baku, the UN says countries, companies, they lag in response to tackle methane emissions. And adoption of AI and machine learning on the agenda at the 6th edition of the Geo India 2024. That's India's premier mega Earth Science Conference. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lin. Here's a recap of our main stories. Sri Lanka reposes faith in new faces. President Disanayake's NPP moves from 3 seats in the outgoing parliament to 159 in the new. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi marks the commencement of the 150th birth anniversary year celebration of Bagwan Birsa Munda on the occasion of Janjatiya Gaurav Diwas. Senior Hamas official says that the group is ready for a ceasefire in Gaza. The US ambassador also presents a peace plan in Lebanon. And we are joined now by Dr. Shrimal Fernando, his advisor of the new regional diplomacy. He's joining us live from Colombo. Thank you very much, Dr. Fernando. Now, is there too much pressure on President Disanayake with this kind of a mandate? Or, does it strengthen his hands like no other president before him?
I would say his hands are strengthened like no other president. I mean, it's a new chapter in Sri Lanka when it comes to politics, because he gained a 2/3 majority. That's 159, even more than the previous president Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And also, this mandate is not only from the south; it is also from the north. Where Jaffna district was won by the NPP, and also a lot of support coming from all communities. And yes, that's what I feel. Yeah.
Okay, indeed. Now, among the new faces in Parliament, who are likely to hold positions in the government? Because obviously there are lots of new faces. After all, the NPP had only 3 seats earlier. Now they have 159.
Yes, especially the MPs like Handun Hetty could hold, and also Dr. Nalinder might hold the health ministry position. And there are many MPs who have got elected. It's a system change, and it's a new direction when it comes to the national people's power handling the country's new development trajectory in the coming years, right?
Indeed, you say that it's a new Sri Lanka in a sense. But, is there a demand to go after the old guard for corruption? Is that something that is included in this mandate, in your opinion?
Yes, I mean, these were the pledges before NPP came to power. And definitely corruption charges will be there. And that will be one of the key mandates of the new political party that has come into power in Sri Lanka.
What happens now to the opposition? So some analysts say that there isn't much opposition, but we know that the Rajapaksas are history, at least for the moment. Ranil Wickramasinghe's party was reduced to 5 seats, and even Sajith Premadasa isn't much of an opposition given the numbers of seats that they won.
Yes, but what I would say is, even though they have reduced, the Samagi Janabalavege has reduced from 54 to 41 seats, there's potential with time. The opposition could raise, if certain things are not achieved within a certain period, they can garner the strength. Now, if we see the previous opposition, when NPP was only 3 seats, how they garnered their strength when the 2022 uprising came, they gained strength. So anything could happen if pledges are not kept on a pace, on the right pace. So, but I think this government will do their best for the people, and they have promised, and it's a new.
So that's easier said than done, Dr. Fernando. After all, you know, I mean, was a financial crisis that the country went through, and reducing the cost of living from the leftist point of view. Some of the people who've given sound bites to agencies, they've said that, you know, this is a party that will look at its ideologies, its leftist ideologies, it will fulfill them. How do you think this can be, you know, done at this time when the country is actually trying to bring about an economic recovery?
But still, when it comes to economic balancing, India and China are key 2 players with the IMF. Still, the reform process has to go ahead. But also, austerity measures that were there in the previous government should be reduced, so that the people of the middle class and the lower middle class gain an upper hand and have breathing space. So these are areas that this new government, with more welfare policies in their task, will try to handle towards cushioning the economic burden in the coming months.
Dr. Fernando, you're an expert in foreign affairs, so let me ask you, you did mention both China and India are important in managing the economic situation. How do you look at the foreign policy of Dissanayake going forward now that he has this kind of mandate?
Well, for Dissanayake and the National People's Alliance, the neighbor is the key. Even though political directions have changed a little bit, I would say Dissanayake will have the first priority towards India when it comes to security as well as economic stability. And he has discussed, like when he came to power with the Indian High Commissioner, on key areas like connectivity, energy, and this government is seeking expertise from India when it comes to energy, when it comes to Trincomalee, Mana Basin, and also disputes on the fisheries area will be, I think, solved. And a mandate that is coming from the north when it comes to the 13th Amendment and other areas will be key to have a more diverse as well as more exclusive kind of approach and a socialist approach, which is more likely admired by most of these powerful nations like India and China. So I think he will have a smooth ride, and I hope the new foreign minister, the incoming foreign minister, who will have more advice and a balanced approach when it comes to India and its long-standing friendship with their.
And if you could give me an assessment from the ground, you know, about the recovery, the process, how well on track it is, and in terms of also the improvement in tourism. After all, tourism was affected during the time of the financial crisis.
Yes, tourism is cushioning the current economy, as well as the GDP growth is picking up, as well as the rupee is getting stabilized. And during the previous government, as well as the incoming government, which is trying to stabilize the investment deals, as well as all the restructuring deals with the international private bondholders, as well as nations like India, China, as well as Japan, were key during that. This has brought some kind of stability, and I think when the fourth tranche is released by the IMF, and more monetary measures, as well as physical and sustainable monetary measures are implemented, this will bring more outlook for the new government and to proceed on a more upward trajectory in the GDP. This is the key. Economy will be the key in the coming months for this new government.
Dr. Shrimal Fernando, thank you very much for joining us from Colombo and wishing you all the very best for the new government. Now, moving on then to our next story. Realistic positions are being held hostage, in fact, to extreme demands by climate activists at COP29. That's what's expected. You know, while the world is making an effort to transition to clean and green energy, the regime being built to do so is expecting to do so faster, and that's subject to lobbies, some slowing things down, others presenting unrealistic options. Let's look at this report at what's happening in Baku.
Calls for reforms in UN COP climate talks have been gaining momentum as Azerbaijan hosts the 29th edition of the summit. A group of climate experts and former leaders, including ex-UN chief Ban Ki-moon, said that summit's current structure simply cannot deliver the change at a rampant speed and scale. Others have criticized the presence of fossil fuel industries lobbyists at the meet in Baku. Carrying replica of snake, several NGOs demanded that the lobbyists be kicked out. They said that it was like inviting tobacco companies to a conference on lung cancer. Former US Vice President Al Gore also slammed the fossil fuel industry in a fiery speech.
We just have to decide how long the world is going to cower in front of the financial and political power of the fossil fuel industry. If we can find it within ourselves in every country to come together and make intelligent choices, we can solve this.
The decision to host the summit in Azerbaijan, which is a major oil and gas producer, has also come under scrutiny. There have also been calls for climate financing, with India highlighting that the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly evident. Intervening on behalf of like-minded developing countries, India reiterated that developed countries need to commit to providing at least 1.3 trillion every year to developing nations till 2030. Protesters at the summit also raised the issue of climate financing, saying that payments should be made on time. Amid the push for initiatives, host Azerbaijan has said the talks have made little progress.
We must be honest. We believe that the pace of their work is currently too slow. We cannot afford to leave too much ground to be covered later in the summit at the political level. We are urging everyone to intensify their engagements and remain focused on the imperative to make quick progress.
Nearly 200 countries are gathered in Baku, Azerbaijan, with the primary goal of agreeing to a financial aid package to help developing countries adapt to climate change and recover from extreme weather events. Bureau Report, DD India.
Brazil launched the Global Alliance for Hunger and Poverty on Friday at the G20 summit in Rio, with an initial 41 participating members pledging to lift 500 million people out of poverty through cash transfers and social protection systems. The initiative brings together developed nations, NGOs and financial institutions to donate money and expertise to countries in need. The intention is to remove all nations from the Food and Agricultural Organization's hunger map by 2030. Leaders of the G20 group of largest economies meet in Rio de Janeiro on Monday and Tuesday for their annual summit hosted by Brazil, whose government has made fighting world hunger a priority along with climate change and reforming multilateral governance. Brazilian Minister of Social Development, Wellington Dias, said that the alliance is likely to reach its 100-country target in the coming months, with more than 50 nations currently preparing plans to join. Let's take a look now at other stories making news around the world. On the first day of the Great World Race in Antarctica, William Monsell and Ashley Paulson, they set new record times for the marathon. The event saw 54 entrants from 15 countries competing over 7 marathons on 7 continents in a week. The Colombian parliament approved a law banning marriages under the age of 18. It ends a 137-year-old law in the country's civil code, which had allowed under 18 people to marry with parental consent. This year's Beaver Moon dazzled viewers across Vietnam on Friday night, illuminating the skies as a spectacular supermoon. A full moon is classified as a supermoon when it reaches its closest point to the Earth in orbit. Hollywood actress Jennifer Lawrence and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai attended the premiere of Bread and Roses at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. The documentary captures the experiences of women since the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. Geo India 2024, India's premier mega geoscience or earth science conference with the theme Exploring New Dimensions of Energy Dynamics is underway in Greater Noida. The 6th edition touches upon adoption of AI and machine learning in the exploration sector as we adapt to the changing global energy ecosystem. DD India correspondent Anil Thomas has the details.
India's premier geoscience conference and exhibition, Geo India 2024, begins in Greater Noida for the next 3 days. The premier South Asian conference and exhibition takes a broader look at the role of geoscience towards energy independence and adapting to a changing global energy ecosystem.
We have gone up from 6% of the sedimentary basin exploitation in 2014 to 10%. And when we finish the current rounds of OALP, Open Acreage Licensing Policy, we will take it up to 16%. We are trying to catch up and make up for the somewhat tardy or slow focus and implementation in the past.
Themed Exploring New Dimensions of Energy Dynamics, this edition will touch upon adoption of AI and machine learning. The 3-day event provides a unique forum for geoscience professionals, business groups, and stakeholders to find solutions, compress the time cycle, and the need for collaborative efforts for oil exploration.
Moving from a very convoluted NELP regime to a very, very open revenue sharing mechanism, limiting regulators' role to a large extent so that India is seen as is also helping us in doing ease of doing business.
Through 5 editions, Geo India has traced the industry's journey from exploring new frontiers to embracing energy transition and decarbonization, with the 6th edition highlighting South Asia's role in sustainable geosciences.
Now we are trying to become the bridge between the industry from where we are and also from the academia, because we have a lot of projects which have been sponsored to the academia.
The biggest rush in the Geo India 2024 is the students program, where geoscience enthusiasts will be exposed to the professional nuances of the petroleum industry to groom them into future energy soldiers of the fastest growing developing nation, which is hungry for energy. Anil Thomas's report from Noida for DD India.
Tribal Research Institute in Ladakh celebrated the 150th birth anniversary of Bagwan Birsa Munda on Janjatiya Diwas or Janjata Gaurav Diwas, and the event honored the legacy of the iconic tribal leader and his contribution to the empowerment of tribal communities. Padma Shri Akone Ashkar Ali Basharat was the chief guest, and the Purgi language expert Mohammed Issa Sabri was also the guest of honor on the occasion. This event highlighted courage and unwavering commitment of the Dharti Aba Birsa Munda to justice. This year is being celebrated as the 150th year of the birth anniversary of the tribal leader and the freedom fighter Bagwan Birsa Munda. The National Tribal Research Institute and India's Ministry of Tribal Affairs organized a colorful program of tribal songs and dances in Delhi, which left the visitors enthralled. Employees Provident Fund Organization, or EPFO, completed 72 years of its formation on Friday. India's Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Mansukh Mandavia, gave away the awards to meritorious and best performing regional and district officers of the EPFO. The awards were based on the criteria of best client services, cleanliness and innovation.
We will also launch a large awareness campaign so that each member ensures that his latest profile is updated. All these changes will ensure faster updation of annual accounts and interest credit. We are also taking several steps to simplify processes in claim processing so that grievances are significantly reduced. We have to focus on reducing grievances and increasing awareness. We have to make it simple for establishments to comply.
Well, let's take a look at other stories making the news now. After agreeing to grievances of students, Uttar Pradesh's Public Service Commission's preliminary examinations will be conducted on December 22 on the single day with 2 different shifts. The first metro train, comprising 6 coaches procured by Delhi Metro for its Phase 4 operations, has reached Delhi from Chennai. It marks a significant milestone towards operationalizing the priority corridors of Delhi Metro Phase 4. Fireworks began at the ghats of Varanasi on the occasion of Dev Deepavali on Friday. It is a Hindu festival celebrated after 15 days of Diwali, and this is on the full moon night of the month of Kartika. The International Pushkar Fair concluded with a colorful closing ceremony on Friday. This year, over 600,000 devotees and more than 20,000 foreign tourists visited the fair in Pushkar in Rajasthan along with their animals. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get you some sports news now. The Indian Cricket Board has released the players list for the 2025 edition of the Indian Premier League on Friday. A total of 574 players are set to feature in this mega auction. The list has 366 players from India and 208 from overseas, including 3 from associate nations. A total of 204 slots will be up for grabs, with 70 slots for overseas players. The 2-day auction will commence in Jeddah city of Saudi Arabia on November 24. The Indian pacer Anshul Kamboj has etched his name in the record books, and he's become the 3rd bowler in the history of Ranji Trophy to take all 10 wickets in an innings on Friday. Kamboj, who plays for the Indian state of Haryana, achieved this feat against Kerala. The right-arm seamer took 10 wickets for 49 runs in 30.1 overs and helped his team to bundle out Kerala for 291 on day 3. Earlier, Premangshuk Chatterjee of Bengal and Pradeep Sundaram of Rajasthan also had grabbed 10 wickets in an innings earlier. Now, Chatterjee had achieved this milestone way back in 1957 against Assam, while Sundaram had achieved it in 1985 against Vidarbha. The police have arrested 40 people at the tense football match between France and Israel in the Nations League near Paris. The match took place under intense security after fans of the Israeli club Maccabi Tel Aviv were attacked in Amsterdam last week. Around 4,000 police and members of the French security forces patrolled inside and outside the stadium. Stewards had to intervene at one point to stop fans of both nations from clashing in the stands. The match ended in a goalless draw, but the point earned was enough for France to qualify for the quarterfinals. Guru Nanak Jayanti, or Guru Purab, is being celebrated with religious fervour across India and the world today. It marks the birth of the first Sikh Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who laid the foundation of Sikhism. This year marks the 555th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. The famous Golden Temple in India's Amritsar city was illuminated with colourful lights on Friday. Thousands of devotees thronged the temple complex, lit candles and offered prayers to celebrate the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev, the founder of the faith. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, and let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. That app is available on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.